US President Donald Trump on Wednesday dismissed a series of Democratic primary victories in New York, backed by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, arguing that the Democratic Party was moving further to the left. Speaking alongside NATO Chief Mark Rutte at the White House, Trump described the growing democratic socialist movement as really communists and warned that progressive policies could drive residents and businesses away from major cities.
Well, they're going radical left. They're going really, you talk about the Democrat socialists, it's really communist. These people. I watched that woman last night. That's not a socialist. I know socialists. That woman is a communist. And what they don't say is that I was 16-0 last night. But mine were a little more boring, a little more mainstream. They were Republican conservatives. But we were 16-0. And if you look over the last 2.5 years, we're about 347 and just about 0. That's pretty good. But nobody writes that. But he picked 3. They won. They beat a guy named Dan Goldman, who's, a loser. He was one of my prosecutors, one of my many prosecutors that they used on me. Dan Goldman, not a good prosecutor, fortunately, but he's now looking for a job. I was very surprised to see, because he's a pretty liberal guy. When they go more liberal than Dan Goldman, they're really into Never Land.
The remarks came a day after candidates endorsed by Mamdani secured 3 significant primary victories in New York. Former city comptroller Brad Lander defeated Congressman Dan Goldman, while Assembly member Claire Valdez won an open congressional race. In another closely watched contest, activist Dare Eliza Avila Chevalier narrowly defeated 5-term Congressman Adriano Espaillat. The results are widely being seen as a consolidation of political influence for Mamdani, whose election as New York City mayor last year reshaped the city's political landscape.
What I see these results as a reflection of are the fact that New Yorkers are hungry for a new kind of politics. They are hungry for a politics that understands working people should be at the heart of it. And they're hungry for a politics that looks at the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world and understands that it's unacceptable that 1 in 4 are living in poverty. It's unacceptable that too many New Yorkers are spending all of their day trying to figure out how they're going to make their rent check or pay for their groceries or pay their Con Ed bill. And what we saw last night was a hunger for leaders who will be there on the front lines, looking to make it easier for working people to afford life in the greatest city in the world.
The victories also reflect the continued growth of the democratic socialist movement in the United States, a trend that traces its roots back to the 2016 presidential campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders. Recent local election results have seen progressive candidates gain ground beyond New York, including victories in Washington, D.C., and strong performances in Los Angeles. Some analysts argue that the movement momentum has been fueled by opposition to Trump's political agenda, as well as frustration among progressive voters over Democratic leadership and U.S. support for Israel's war on Gaza. The latest results have intensified debate within the Democratic Party over its future direction. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer had both faced pressure over their response to Mamdani's rise, reflecting broader tensions between the party's progressive and moderate wings. Political strategists warned that while Democratic Socialist candidates may perform strongly in heavily Democratic districts, the party's path to national success still depends on winning competitive swing districts and battleground states. Particular attention has focused on Avila Cavalier's victory over Espaillat. Some centrist Democrats argue that her past comments on issues such as immigration, policing, and Israel could provide Republicans with political ammunition in future elections. Avila Chevalier has since deleted some earlier social media posts and apologized for certain remarks, but continues to advocate a strongly progressive agenda, including opposition to migrant deportations. Espaillat had warned that during the campaign that her positions were too extreme, saying voters should carefully examine her record. The results underscore an increasingly important debate within the Democratic Party ahead of the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential race. Progressive activists argue that voters want candidates willing to challenge wealthy interests, corporations, and political status quo. Moderates, however, contend that elections are ultimately decided in competitive battleground states rather than democratic strongholds such as New York and California. As the party looks ahead to the future national contests, the balancing between those competing visions remains one of the most important questions facing Democrats.